The Saturn had a big problem. Well, okay, the Saturn had a lot of big problems, but chief among them was a serious lack of Sonic games. Sonic & Knuckles, the last mainline Sonic game, was almost 2 years old by the end of 1996. Sega had gone one whole Christmas without Sonic on the shelves and appeared determined to make sure that wouldn't happen again. With the Saturn fighting for its life here in the West and Sonic Team off doing their own original IP, it was left to the US Sega Technical Institute to bring the Hedgehog to the Saturn. Sega wasn't going to go 2 holiday seasons in a row with their mascot sitting on the bench. Oddly enough, though, Sega decided Sonic needed one final hurrah on the all-but-dead Genesis, and so contracted Traveler's Tales to create Sonic 3D Blast. Traveler's Tales' best-known game at this point was probably Mickey Mania. But in the middle of 1996, things went sideways. Sonic Xtreme had been beset by trouble since development began. Shifting system specs, an engine that just didn't want to run well on the Saturn, apparently forbidden to use Yuji Naka's Knights engine, general personnel issues. It all came to a head, and STI informed Sega that Sonic Xtreme would not be ready by Christmas. Bernie Stoller, the newly minted president and chief operating officer of Sega of America, had a backup plan. Sega Technical Institute would work with Traveler's Tales and Sonic Team to port Sonic 3D Blast over to the Saturn for the Christmas season. Traveler's Tales managed to port the entire engine over to the Saturn in something like 4 months. All the graphics and sprites were replaced with high-res, high-color versions that took advantage of the Saturn hardware, and voila! Sega had its first Sonic game on the Saturn. And Genesis owners still got their final turn with the Hedgehog as well. Sonic 3D Blast is 3D in a late 90s 16-bit kind of way. The isometric view is made to seem even more three-dimensional thanks to the use of pre-rendered sprites. All the rage since Nintendo and Rare hit it big with Donkey Kong Country. This was a terrible trend that Sega would continue right through most of the Saturn's life. The game takes place on Flicky Island, and along with just collecting rings, Sonic is tasked with collecting a certain number of Flickies, which are tiny birds in each area. Once enough of these birds are collected and sent safely through a nearby ring, Sonic gets to move on to the next area. Flickies, of course, were not new characters. They hail from Sega's 1984 arcade game of the same name. In fact, the goal of Sonic 3D Blast is almost exactly the same as the goal in Flicky. Gather up a bunch of little birds and safely see them to the exit. It's worth noting that Yoji Ishii, the creator of Flicky, was also a producer on Sonic 3D Blast. Collected Flickies follow Sonic around, and actually extend his reach on high jumps, as his bird followers actually get greater height than he does. Some collectibles are only attainable this way. The downside is that Flickies will scatter if Sonic takes a hit while they're following, forcing him to gather them all up again before he can continue. To make things even more tricky, different colors of Flicky react in different ways. Some will actively move away from Sonic, while others will simply circle in the area where they were scattered. Despite the use of pre-rendered characters, Sonic 3D Blast looks pretty good for the most part. It's a shame the same can't be said for the gameplay though. Generally speaking, isometric action games are a crapshoot. It's so hard to make precise jumps from this viewpoint. And it's made even worse by the fact that Sonic wants to go faster than is comfortable at this angle. Plus, he slides around like the entire game world is made of ice. The angle also makes it difficult to fight bosses, as this game was meant to be played with a directional pad, and thus diagonal attacks aren't always the easiest thing to pull off. Besides the updated graphics, there are a few more differences between the Genesis and Saturn versions of Sonic 3D Blast. The first is the music. While the Genesis game features tunes by Jun Senoue, a staple of the Sonic games since Sonic 3, the Saturn game was scored by Richard Jacques, and the soundtrack is fantastic. It's easily my favorite part of the game. It both feels completely original in the Sonic universe, but somehow fits just perfectly. Richard would go on to compose the glorious soundtrack for Sonic R, Traveler's Tale's second Sonic game on the Saturn. Sonic 3D Blast also marks the very first time Sonic made a foray into a truly 3D space, thanks to the completely original bonus stages. These polygonal interpretations of the bonus half-pipes from Sonic 2 were programmed by members of Sonic Team, and helped to further solidify this Genesis port as a truly 32-bit game. This and the 3D world in the upcoming Sonic Jam are the initial glimpses of what Sonic Team would eventually do with their flagship character on the Dreamcast. While I think it's debatable that Sonic 3D Blast should sit alongside the original series as one of the premier Sonic games, it was ultimately one of the best-selling games on the system, so you have to think that this backup plan was the right call in the end. In 2016, Traveler's Tales kind of returned to the Sonic series for a third time, announcing a Sonic the Hedgehog playset for its LEGO Dimensions game. Thanks for watching The Game Shelf. Please give the video a like and check out the other episodes in the series. And don't forget to check out Generation 16, the series that showcases the history of Sega's Mega Drive.